there's a specific moment every man goes through. A moment that separates boys from men. One day you wake up, pick up the phone, and she's gone. No text, no good morning. No sign that you still exist in her world. And immediately, inside, something shifts. A pang, an emptiness, an impulse to do the most natural thing in the world. Look for her, write to her, ask, understand, fix it. Because the male mind hates emptiness. It needs clarity, direction, control. But in love, or rather, in the dynamic between masculine and feminine, emptiness is direction. And silence, sometimes, is the only answer you need. Many men crumble at this moment. They lose their center. They begin to ask themselves questions that wear them down. Did I do something wrong? Is there someone else? What if she ignored me just to see my reaction? And that's exactly where the test begins. Because silence, in the language of the feminine, isn't just the absence of words. It's a test, not hers, but yours. What will you do now that you no longer receive validation? Will you stay centered, or will you implode in your insecurity? Will you be able to keep calm, or will you be a slave to the anxiety of winning her back? This is where we see the difference between the man who lives by reacting and the man who lives by governing himself. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "If it's out of your control, it's not your problem." And this principle still holds true today. When she ignores you, what happens is out of your control. But how you react, that's entirely yours. The authentic masculine doesn't chase silence. He inhabits it. He transforms it into his temple, because he knows that those who fret in the void only show that they have no roots. When a woman distances herself or ignores you, you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to explain to her how much you're worth. You don't have to convince her. You just have to stay. Stay whole, stay calm, stay within yourself. Because every time you try to fill the silence, you communicate weakness. And every time you resist temptation, you communicate power. The feminine, deep down, doesn't search for words. It searches for presence. And presence isn't demonstrated by speaking. It's demonstrated by not collapsing. You don't have to appear cold. You don't have to feign indifference. You simply have to embody the most difficult Stoic principle of all, mastery of emotions. Epictetus said it clearly. It's not what happens that disturbs a man, but his opinion of what happens. She ignores you, and your mind immediately interprets, she's rejecting me. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe she's just observing you. Maybe she wants to feel your wordless energy. Maybe she's measuring your worth by your calm, not your messages. The real mistake is to react as if everything depended on her. It doesn't. It only depends on how capable you are of remaining sovereign in the chaos. Silence is like a blade. It can cut you or it can temper you. It depends on how you approach it. Impulsive men fear it. Wise men use it. When she disappears, you don't have to look for her. You have to find yourself again. Find your rhythm, your energy, your direction. Because her absence isn't a punishment. It's the space you need to remember who you are without her. The strong masculine doesn't react to emptiness. He expands within it. Your job isn't to fill the silence, but to remain so calm that the silence itself becomes your voice. When she hears that you haven't buckled, that you haven't fretted, that you haven't anxiously searched, she'll understand that you're not like the others. Because the world is full of men who pursue, but very few men know how to stop. Silence is the language of strength, and those who master it never lose. When a woman ignores you, the first thing you think is that she doesn't care anymore. But the reality is much more subtle, more strategic, more instinctive. Because behind every feminine silence, there isn't always disinterest. Often there's evidence of energy. The feminine doesn't communicate like the masculine. The man speaks to clarify. The woman withdraws to listen. And when she disappears, she's actually listening to what words can't express. The reaction of your spirit. Because a woman, deep down, is attracted by mystery, but repelled by need. And ignoring you isn't always a rejection. It's a way to see who you are when you lose control. Many men don't understand this dynamic and react anxiously. They write more, insist, explain themselves, ask. But every word spoken in that moment becomes a confession of emotional weakness. Because a woman doesn't measure love in the quantity of messages, she measures it in presence and calm. When she stops responding, she observes you from afar. See if you remain yourself. See if your mood changes. See if you need her attention to feel complete. If your energy collapses, she loses attraction. If your energy remains intact, she becomes curious. The truth is that a woman ignores the man who chases her, but respects the one who remains firm in silence. Not because she loves mind games, but because respect arises only where there is strength. And strength, for her, is calm under pressure. Epictetus wrote, "Do you want to be invincible? Then don't fight what you can't control." You can't control whether she answers you or not, but you can control who you are while you wait. You can transform anxiety into observation, reaction into breathing, fear into presence. Every female silence is an invisible battlefield. There, words don't win, vibrations do, and the masculine, vibrating in need, always loses. A woman isn't cruel when she withdraws. She's guided by an ancient instinct, a radar that distinguishes the man who wants her to fill a void from the man who wants her because he's already full of himself. The former ditches her, the latter ignites her. Silence thus becomes a natural test. Can you remain stable even when I don't choose you? Can you continue your life even without my presence? And the paradox is that the more you remain still, the more your absence begins to weigh. A woman may ignore your message, but she can't ignore your calm energy, which continues to exist without her. Because authentic masculinity doesn't disappear when it's not looked at. It continues to emanate. Many men believe that, to be noticed, they have to do something. But true power lies in not doing, in the invisible action of self-control. It's like being in the middle of a storm and not moving a muscle. Those who look at you, even without understanding it, sense that you're not just anyone, that you have discipline, that you have depth, that you don't react, you respond. Seneca wrote, "He who is master of himself is master of the world." And when she ignores you, the world shrinks to that small phone screen. That's where your battle is played out. If you control yourself, you dominate the world. If you give in, you lose it. Giving in doesn't just mean texting her. Giving in also means constantly thinking about her, asking everyone's opinion, feeding the drama inside you. All of this is wasted energy. The truly stoic man doesn't fight silence. He uses it to recharge. While she disappears, he immerses himself in his life. He trains, works, creates, grows, not because he wants to distract himself, but because he's understood that his time is not a weapon to be wasted. A man who dedicates himself to himself in silence is a man who transforms absence into magnetism. The further you distance yourself from the impulse to seek her, the more she feels your absence as presence. Because the silence of a strong man isn't empty, it's dense. It's a silence that speaks, that makes you reflect, that brings forth the question, why doesn't he chase me like the others? It's in that moment that power changes direction. It's no longer you who is ignored. It's she who must reckon with your calm. True detachment isn't coldness, it's presence without need. It's knowing that everything that needs to return will return. And everything that goes away didn't belong to you. This is the heart of Stoic philosophy. Accept what happens, use it as a tool, and never be defined by what you can't control. Marcus Aurelius said, "Live according to nature, and you will have no reason to complain." Human nature is the calm beneath the chaos. A woman's nature is to test that calm. She doesn't do it out of malice. She does it to see if she can trust him. Because a man who crumbles when he's not noticed will never be able to protect her when life puts him to the test. She doesn't seek perfection. She seeks solidity. And solidity manifests itself precisely when she ignores you. Because if you remain firm there, you remain firm everywhere. Don't chase her silence. Honor it. Use it to become even more centered. Every minute you resist the urge to seek her is a brick in the building of your inner strength. It's not her you need to win back. It's your calm. Because a calm man is an irresistible man. When a woman ignores you, your first instinct is to interpret that silence as a judgment, as if her lack of response were definitive proof that you're not good enough. But this is the most dangerous deception, because the moment you believe her silence defines your worth, you've handed her power. Do you explain yourself? Do you justify yourself? You look for the why, as if there were an invisible court and she were the judge. But a man who tries to prove he's not guilty has already lost his temper. And when you lose your temper, you lose respect. A woman doesn't judge you by what you say. She measures you by how you react. And if you react like an accused, you'll be treated as such. This is the fatal mistake that destroys attraction, giving personal meaning to what doesn't concern you. She doesn't respond? It's not a judgment. It's a neutral event, like rain or wind. It only gets you wet if you choose to stay still. Epictetus said, "It's not things in themselves that disturb us, but the opinions we have about them." Silence isn't rejection. It only becomes rejection if you interpret it that way. The male mind, however, is trained to seek logic in everything. If she doesn't write to me, there must be a reason. Yes, but that reason isn't necessarily against you. Maybe she's thinking. Maybe she's distracted. Maybe she's testing you. Or maybe she doesn't have the awareness to handle the contact. You can't know, and it doesn't matter. What matters is not to react as if your identity depended on her attention. A man who lives this way, waiting for a signal, a word, a sign, becomes a satellite orbiting a sun he doesn't control. But a stoic man doesn't orbit. He walks straight. Because respect is born when you show yourself that you are your priority. Not arrogantly, but with dignity. A man who knows who he is doesn't defend himself against silence. He lets it speak. Because he knows that time reveals everything, and calm, over time, always wins. When she is silent and you remain steadfast, you're not just pretending nothing happened. You're sending a powerful message. I don't define myself by your response. And that's irresistible. Because in a world where everyone reacts immediately, those who know how to remain still command the frequency. Imagine two people, one who needs to know immediately, and one who doesn't need to know anything. Who is freer? Who is more charming? Who is in control? Freedom isn't not having emotions. It's not being possessed by them. A woman feels this freedom, even if she doesn't understand it rationally. She senses that you don't act like a man afraid of losing, but like a man who has already chosen himself. Here's the paradox. The more you detach yourself, the more your presence grows. The more you stop searching, the more you are perceived. Because the silence of a centered man is magnetic, while the silence of an insecure man is empty. You don't have to punish her with indifference. That's still a way of reacting. You simply have to live. Continue your routine, your projects, your discipline. Because true revenge isn't making her miss you. It's no longer noticing her absence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be different from the one who hurt you. And you can be different from the one who reacts impulsively, from the one who begs for attention, from the one who confuses value with a response. Because the truth is this, the man who reacts to silence with need communicates to the entire world that he feels incomplete. And an incomplete man cannot attract, only pursue. But the man who knows how to remain in the void, who knows how to observe without reacting, who knows how to transform pain into self-control, that man elevates. He becomes rare. He becomes the kind of man whom silence does not destroy, but strengthens. Every time you resist the urge to explain yourself, every time you choose calm over reaction, you are training the noblest part of your spirit. The Stoics called it arete, the supreme virtue, the ability to act in accordance with one's rational nature, even under pressure. And feminine silence for a man is one of the greatest pressures, because it is not just an absence of words, it is an absence of control. And there, In the void of control, your strength is born. The average man seeks immediate answers. The elevated man waits for the truth to emerge on its own, because he knows that time is always his ally. When you don't react, you give space. And in space, the other person can reflect, can sense your stability, can recognize the difference between you and others. If, however, you respond anxiously, shut everything down. Because your reaction confirms their intuition, that you weren't stable, but simply hungry for attention. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to be. Be firm, consistent, dignified, because dignity, even in silence, is noisy. When the world is agitated, you remain still. When she is silent, you listen. When the mind wants to act, you breathe. And in this simple yet powerful act, you become what the Stoics called imperturbable. Not cold, present, not detached, master of yourself. Respect is born when you no longer seek to please, but to live in accordance with your values. And the first value of the authentic masculine is this: never beg for what you can generate on your own. Peace, calm, strength, respect. All this doesn't come from her. It comes from you. She can ignore you, but she can't ignore a man forever who doesn't need to be seen to know who he is. When she ignores you, it's often not love that burns inside. It's wounded pride. That small voice that says, "How dare she ignore me? With all I've done, with all I am?" The ego speaks like this, and if you don't recognize it, it commands you. Because the male ego can't tolerate rejection. It won't accept losing control. It can't live with the fact that someone might not choose him. And then the automatic reaction kicks in. You want to show her what she's lost. You want to make her pay. You want to prove you're better off without. But you're not better. You're just putting on an act to avoid feeling the blow. It's an invisible battle between you and yourself, between your wounded self and your conscious self. The immature masculine wants to react. He wants to respond immediately, even if only to regain control. But the evolved masculine knows that the real victory is not reacting. The Stoics called this ability apatheia, freedom from destructive passions, not because you don't feel them, but because you don't allow them to dictate your actions. Epictetus said, "When someone provokes you, know that it is your opinion of what happens that hurts you, not the event itself. It's not she who hurts you. It's your interpretation of what she does. It's your belief that you deserve a certain behavior. It's the image you've built of yourself, and which now falters." Every man experiences this moment at least once. And there, right there, the possibility of growth arises, because every time your pride bleeds, you have the opportunity to choose calm instead of reaction. True power is not in not being touched, but in not being guided by what touches you when you feel ignored. The mind pushes you to react in three ways. Attack. You want to make her feel guilty. You want to hit her with cold words. You want to prove that you're over. Forced seduction. You try to win her back, to prove your worth, to rekindle contact at all costs. Feigned indifference. You pretend not to care, but inside you're seething. Publishing, writing, doing everything to attract indirect attention. In all three cases, you're losing, because you're still reacting to her. And as long as you react, you're hers. A woman doesn't control a man through force. She controls him through her reaction. And your wounded pride is the perfect gateway. But there's a way out, only one: conscious observation. Look at the anger, feel it in your body. Breathe, and ask yourself, where does it come from? It doesn't come from her. It comes from your need for validation, from your ego that can't accept the idea of not being chosen. Here's the harsh truth. It's not love that's hurting you. It's the image of yourself you've built with her gaze. Now that that gaze is missing, you no longer know who you are. It's in that moment that Stoicism becomes a clean blade. Cut away all illusion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you feel hurt, remember, it's not what happens, but how you interpret it. And you can always choose another interpretation. You can choose to see ignorance as disrespect, or as a lesson in inner strength. You can say, "She's not ignoring me. She's showing me how much power I have over my own ego." Every time you resist the urge to react, you're building the kind of man who dominates himself. The man who doesn't bow to judgment, who doesn't respond in anger, who doesn't struggle to prove his existence. And the amazing thing is this: the more you dominate your ego, the more attractive you become, because silent power is the highest form of charm. Pride screams at you, "Show her you don't need her." Wisdom whispers, "You don't have to show it, you have to be it." When a woman ignores you, your ego wants you to believe you're losing something, but you're not losing her. You're losing control of yourself. And that is the true defeat. A Stoic, however, understands that every external provocation is merely an internal training ground. Every silence becomes a mental dojo. Every emotion, a weight to be lifted calmly and forcefully. You must not run away from the pain of rejection. You must remain within it like a warrior training in the rain. Every drop that falls is not a nuisance. It is resistance that builds. Pain does not define you. Pain refines you. Not reacting does not mean being weak. It means being strong enough to choose when and if to act. The common man responds to silence with haste. The noble man responds with time. And when anger dissolves, when pride subsides, only what you truly are remains. A calm that cannot be bought. A strength that cannot be seen, but felt. Your greatest power lies not in conquering the other, but in conquering yourself. Because, as Seneca wrote, "He who masters himself is greater than he who conquers an empire." And in love, conquering yourself is the only way to no longer be a slave to anyone. When you learn to let your pride flow without reacting, something profoundly changes. You realize you no longer need to win. It's enough to be at peace. And from that peace, every choice becomes clearer, because you don't react to hurt, but you act out of consistency. You don't try to be superior, but simply free. The ego screams. Wisdom whispers. Choose to listen to the whisper. When you learn to master wounded pride, you are no longer a man who defends himself. You are a man who inspires respect without speaking. And in a world where everyone reacts, the man who doesn't becomes a silent legend. What truly attracts a woman is not physical strength, nor fabricated charisma, nor perfect words. It's the tranquility of a man who doesn't depend on anything or anyone to feel complete. Detachment isn't coldness, it's power. It's the ability to see the world clearly even when everyone else trembles. It's the point where you stop reacting and start choosing. When she ignores you, your instinct is to fill the void. You want to send a message, seek an explanation, get a response. But the more you search, the more you run away from yourself. Because it's not her you really want, it's the sense of control you've lost. And that's where true detachment comes in. It's not about feigning disinterest. It's not about playing last. Detachment is mastery. It's telling yourself, "I don't need things to go my way to be at peace." This is what the Stoics called ataraxia, the profound serenity that comes when you stop being a slave to circumstances. Epictetus repeated it 1,000 times. Do you want to be free? Then desire only what depends on you. You can't control whether she responds. You can't control whether she comes back, but you can control your reaction. You can choose to remain calm, present, whole, and that calm, over time, becomes magnetic. The true masculine conquers not with pressure, but with the absence of need. It doesn't ask, it doesn't demand, it doesn't push. It remains stable, like a mountain in the midst of a storm. Detachment isn't renunciation, it's knowledge. It's knowing that what's yours can't escape you, and what escapes you never belonged to you. The more you resist the urge to chase, the more you enter a state of silent strength. And that strength is felt even from afar. There's no need to write, no need to explain. Your energy communicates everything, that you are a man who doesn't need to be chosen to be worthy. When you learn to live like this, something in you changes forever, because you stop living based on the responses of others. You no longer care about being accepted or rejected. You care about staying true to yourself. And paradoxically, it's precisely at that moment that you begin to attract more, because detachment is like a magnetic field. The purer it is, the more it attracts. And a woman, faced with a man who doesn't collapse, who doesn't chase, who doesn't give in to fear, begins to ask herself, why not him? In the modern world, silence is power, calm is rare, and rarity is desire. Every time you resist the temptation to write, to react, to justify yourself, you are increasing your invisible value. It's not about being difficult. It's about becoming difficult to destabilize. Because the man who doesn't let himself be carried away by emotions is not a cold man. He's a profound man. When she ignores you and you don't react, you are communicating something very powerful, that you don't need answers to know who you are. This is what the Stoics called autarkeia, self-sufficiency of the soul. The power of internal self-sufficiency. Not in the sense of living in isolation, but in the sense of never begging for your peace from others. The more you cultivate this self-sufficiency, the more you become a fixed point in the chaos. And every woman, consciously or not, is attracted to a man who represents stability in an unstable world. There is nothing more irresistible than a man who can love intensely, yet who depends on no one to maintain balance. Love, when born from a detached man, is pure. It is not possession, it is not need, it is not fear of loss. It is choice, and choice is the noblest form of love. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What is in harmony with nature is never unworthy of you. Stand firm and be simple." Detachment is natural. It is your mind that complicates it with stories, with hypotheses, with the fear of emptiness. But emptiness is not the enemy. It is space. Space to be reborn. Space to rediscover your direction. Every time she distances herself, don't ask yourself why. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this detachment? Every distance is a teacher. Every silence, an invitation to return to you. And when you learn to remain present in the midst of absence, you become what no one can touch. A complete man who chooses, but does not depend. Emotional detachment is not disinterest. It is spiritual mastery. It is proof that your energy does not fluctuate with the opinions of others, that your self-esteem does not swell or collapse based on a message. Those who can live like this become free, and freedom is the highest form of beauty. The free man does not chase. He walks straight. He does not seek attention. He attracts it naturally. He does not beg for love. He radiates it. And while the world reacts, you breathe. While she is silent, you live. While everyone seeks validation, you remain at peace. That is where respect is born. That is where authentic attraction is born. That's where true strength is born, in the calm of those who no longer need anything to be themselves. This is the secret that few understand. Detachment doesn't distance, it elevates. It brings you to a level of presence that no absence can dent, because those who have learned to be in silence are no longer afraid of losing it, and those who don't fear losing are the only ones who will never truly lose. Silence, that empty space that the mind fears, that the heart rejects, that the ego can't stand. And yet, it is precisely there, in that emptiness that seems like a punishment, that your greatest opportunity lies. When she ignores you, she is unknowingly offering you a gift, the chance to return to yourself. Because every man, as long as he is immersed in the noise of attention, forgets to listen to himself. But in silence, everything you ignored about yourself comes back to the surface. It's as if life placed you in front of an invisible mirror and said, "This is who you are when no one is looking." And there you understand. You understand how much you needed her voice to feel alive, how much you made your peace depend on a message, how much your value fluctuated with her presence. She's not the problem. It's your emotional dependence on noise. Men today fear silence because in silence you can't pretend. You can't put on a show. You can't distract yourself. You're forced to look at yourself, and sometimes what you see scares you. That's why many rush to fill the void, with other women, with social media, with work, with constant distractions. anything to avoid facing that moment when the voice inside says, "And now, who are you really without her?" Here's the truth. Silence isn't a punishment. It's a training ground. It's the place where you learn to be with yourself without seeking external validation. That's where strength is born. That's where the Stoic man is forged. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look inside yourself. Within you is the source of goodness, and it can always gush forth, if only you dig it." Silence is that source, but you have to dig it. You have to learn to stay within it without running away. At first it hurts. You feel forgotten, small, invisible. But little by little, if you stay, something changes. The pain turns into calm, calm into clarity, and clarity into power. Because the man who knows how to remain in silence no longer needs to chase. He no longer needs to explain himself. He no longer fears being ignored, because he has understood that silence does not diminish value. It reveals it. Silence reveals who you truly are. When no one is watching, when no one applauds you, when there is no one to impress. And there, if you remain whole, you discover that your strength needs no witnesses, that your calm needs no spectators, that your dignity needs no applause. This is the secret of men who attract even when they do nothing. They don't try to appear. They are. And their mere presence, even silent, makes noise. Silence is the art of resonance. The more you remain still on the outside, the more you expand on the inside. And that inner expansion, even if invisible, is felt. A woman can ignore your messages, but she can't ignore your energy when it's stable, when it's firm, when it's asking for nothing. Because the silence of a stable man creates questions. The silence of an unstable man creates pain. The difference lies entirely in how you experience it. If you suffer in silence, you are enduring it. If you breathe in silence, you are using it. And every minute you resist the temptation to fill it, you are gaining personal power. A power that cannot be seen, but is felt. The man who is not afraid of silence is afraid of nothing, because he has learned to live with the only presence that matters, his own. Seneca wrote, "No wind is favorable to those who do not know where to go." Silence serves this purpose, to find direction, to ask yourself where you're going, who you're doing it for, and whether what you desire comes from the heart or from emptiness. As long as you react, you're a slave to circumstances. But when you learn to use silence to reflect, you become sovereign. There's no point in punishing, no point in taking revenge, no point in showing her what she's lost. All you need to do is grow. Every time life takes someone away from you, it's simply freeing up space for you to get to know yourself better. And the more whole you become, the more you attract from a different place. Not from need, but from abundance. A man who doesn't seek attention attracts it naturally, because he doesn't emit the energy of lack, but of calm, and calm, for the feminine, is irresistible. She ignores you? Good. You listen. Not her, you. What do you feel? Where does it hurt? What are you trying to avoid? The moment you answer honestly, silence stops being a prison and becomes a school. And when you emerge from it, you are no longer the same man. You no longer fear the emptiness, because you've discovered that it's not empty. It's full of you. This is the heart of Stoicism applied to the heart, transforming every loss into growth, every absence into clarity, every silence into personal power. The next time she ignores you, don't fill the void. Sit within, observe. Remain silent longer than she does, because whoever can remain silent the longest wins, not because they dominate the other, but because they dominate themselves. And in a world of reactive men, the one who manages to remain still becomes the highest point in the room. There's an instinct inside every man that outwits him, an ancient, primitive, seemingly almost noble impulse. When a woman pulls away or ignores you, you want to fix it. You want to clarify. You want to show her you care. And you believe that seeking her out is the mature gesture, the right one. But in female psychology, and even more so in the dynamic between masculine and feminine energy, that gesture doesn't engender respect. it destroys it. Because the moment you chase someone who ignores you, you're communicating only one thing. You are the center of my balance, and no woman will ever respect a man who puts his balance in her hands. The mistake is not loving her. The mistake is chasing someone who takes away your presence. True love is born from abundance, not from emptiness. And chasing someone who ignores you means saying without words that without her, you are not enough. The male mind, guided by the ego, confuses action with strength. It thinks, if I do nothing, I'll lose ground. But in love, as in war, there are moments when moving means exposing yourself, and standing still means winning. The true masculine is not afraid of absence. He uses it. He transforms it into mystery, into tension, into silent strength. Because a woman is not tied to the gesture. She is tied to the energy she perceives behind the gesture. When you seek it, you exude need. When you remain, you exude confidence. And confidence is the universal language of respect. This is why every time you try to chase silence, she distances herself further, not out of malice, but by instinct. The feminine cannot respect what yields. It can be compassionate, it can feel tenderness, but desire dies where pity is born. This is the reverse psychology of male detachment. The more you seek, the less you get. The more you withdraw, the more she respects you. Not because you have to manipulate, but because your energy communicates what words cannot, that you are a self-sufficient man. Epictetus said, "He who seeks to please everyone loses himself." When you constantly try to make yourself heard, to prove you care, to explain your worth, you're only saying you don't truly believe it. A man who knows himself doesn't beg for attention. He focuses on his inner realm, on his body, his mind, his direction. And the woman senses it even from a distance. She senses that your energy is no longer directed toward her, but toward your growth. And paradoxically, that's precisely where curiosity arises. What could she be doing? Why doesn't she look anymore? Why does she seem so calm? It's not magic, it's nature. The masculine, when centered, creates a gravitational field. You don't need to move to attract, just be. Seeking her, however, breaks the field. It puts you in a position of lack, of demand, of pursuit. And in the dance of polarities, the pursuer loses strength. Respect doesn't come from how much you give, but from how much you don't let it take away. When she ignores you, your mind screams, "But if I don't do anything, she'll think I don't care." No. If you remain steadfast, she'll understand that you're not agitated by fear, that your value doesn't need to be reminded every day, that you don't seek reassurance, you radiate stability. And that stability, even in silence, is irresistible. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What doesn't harm your virtue doesn't harm you." Being ignored doesn't harm your virtue. It only harms your ego. And if you learn to distinguish them, nothing can truly hurt you anymore. Seeking her, after all, is never for her. It's for you. To calm your anxiety, to avoid feeling helpless, to convince yourself that you're doing something. But the Stoic knows that not reacting is already doing. That control lies not in action, but in the conscious choice not to waste energy. Your absence thus becomes your most powerful tool, not as a punishment, but as a declaration of strength. Every day you don't write, every hour you resist temptation, every moment you choose yourself, you are building an aura that can be felt even from a distance. It is the aura of the man who doesn't beg, of the man who can love without losing himself, of the man who isn't afraid of being alone. And in the world of women, this type of man is not often found. He is rare, and what is rare is always desired. The truth is that women are not attracted to the man who chases them. She's attracted to the man who, even though he could chase her, chooses not to. Because there's power in that choice, and in power, there's charm. Respect is born in silence, but is consolidated in absence. When you're not there and she senses the difference, she understands that your presence had weight. She understands that you weren't one of many. You were someone who didn't bend. And at that point, the game changes. Because those who previously ignored her begin to seek. Not because you manipulated her, but because you showed the rarest thing a man can show: self-control. Your absence is your most powerful language. Don't use it to hurt, but to gain respect. To remind yourself that power lies not in being chosen, but in having the strength not to pursue what doesn't honor you. Seneca wrote, "He who possesses himself loses nothing." And you, in this silence, have the greatest opportunity of all, to demonstrate that you truly possess yourself. Don't seek her. Don't explain yourself. Don't justify yourself. Be the calm she finds nowhere else. Be the absence that forces her to look within. Because in the end, he who knows how to remain in the void without collapsing doesn't just conquer a woman, he conquers himself. Every relationship, every connection, every human exchange is based on an invisible balance. A balance made of energy, presence, tension. When you give too much, something breaks. When you ask too much, something retreats. When you chase, the other runs away. It's the law of counterbalance, a law you can't change, only understand and respect. The moment she ignores you, her silence creates an imbalance. Your mind wants to fill it, compensate for it, restore symmetry. But the nature of balance isn't restored by action. It's restored by the opposite counterbalance. And the counterbalance, in this case, isn't reaction, it's silence. Every time you respond anxiously, every time you search, every time you justify yourself, you're adding weight to the already overloaded side of the scale. And the more you do it, the more the scales tip against you. It's only when you return to the center, when you don't move, when you let her perceive the void she's created, that the balance slowly restores itself. Your silence isn't revenge, it's a balancing force. The woman senses it, because while she acts on the emotional level, provoking, testing, observing, you act on the energetic level. And when that energy remains calm, something inside her rebalances. It's not magic, it's the physics of the soul. The Stoics called it logos, the rationality of the universe, an invisible force that orders everything. And when you stop reacting, you realign yourself with that force. Everything falls back into place. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "He who lives in harmony with reason lives in harmony with the universe." Your silence is precisely this: a return to reason, a descent into calm after chaos. When you don't react, you interrupt the cycle of disorder. You stop fueling tension, and like a lake calming after a storm, the energy between you becomes clear again. Many men think that by remaining silent, they will lose control. But the opposite is true. Only in silence do they regain it. Because respect is not earned by speaking. Respect is earned by not participating in what belittles you. Every time you choose silence, you are saying, "I will not react to what is beneath my dignity." And this is the highest form of power a man can embody. Because the world today is full of reactions. Everyone responds, everyone fights to have the last word. But those who know how to stop the cycle become something rare. And rarity, in the world of energy, is value. When she feels that her silence doesn't upset you, that your calm remains the same, that your presence doesn't waver, she begins to lose her grip. Not because you punished her, but because the dynamic that made her feel in power no longer works. It's as if she's pulling a string, and you're no longer at the other end. She pulls, but the rope remains still. And in that moment, it's not you who has lost control. It's her. This is the law of counterweight. He who resists wins. He who reacts is consumed. And be careful, this is not a game of manipulation. It's not about using silence to get something. It's about using silence to restore balance. Silence thus becomes a sacred boundary, a way of saying, "I will no longer participate in what saps my strength." And there is nothing more virile, more magnetic, more respectable than a man who knows how to calmly set a limit. It's not a limit imposed with anger. It's a limit declared with presence. And presence is what the feminine recognizes as true authority. Seneca wrote, "Anger is a fire that burns those who feed it." Every time you react with anger or anxiety, you are burning your own energy. Every time you choose silence, you are guarding your flame. Silence is like an invisible armor, not rigid, alive. It protects you but allows you to feel. It separates you from chaos but doesn't close you off from the world. And over time, the world adapts to your rhythm, because those who don't react impose their own frequency. Time bends before calm. Energy reorients itself around stability. When you stop chasing, everything authentic begins to move toward you. This is the power of a centered man. He doesn't coerce, he doesn't force, he doesn't demonstrate, he attracts. And a woman, even if she doesn't say so, senses the difference between a man who remains silent out of pride and a man who remains silent out of wisdom. The former still seeks power over others. The latter already has power over himself. The former remains silent to hurt. The latter remains silent to heal. And when silence is born of wisdom, its energy becomes irresistible. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his most intimate meditations, "A soul at peace is stronger than any storm." When she ignores you and you remain at peace, you are no longer in the game. You are no longer the pawn. You become the rule, the constant, the element that doesn't change, even if everything else fluctuates. And that kind of man can't be ignored forever, because the world itself, not just a woman, is drawn to stability. Your silence restores respect, not with noise, but with the absence of noise. Not with force, but with calm. Not with ego, but with presence. This is what it means to be a man according to Stoic philosophy. Not to react to the world, but to teach it with your conduct. How to behave in the presence of force. We live in an age that hates time. A world that tells you that if you don't respond immediately, you lose. That if you don't act now, you are forgotten. That if you don't write, if you don't publish, if you don't show yourself, you don't exist. But the truth is different. Time doesn't kill value. It reveals it. Those who are patient today seem slow, but in reality, they are the only ones who still know how to see beyond. And in love, as in life, patience is the most masculine art there is. When she ignores you, the impulsive man reacts. The immature man responds. But the wise man waits, not out of tactics, but out of proportion, because he knows that every action taken in the fire of emotions produces only ashes. The Stoics knew the law of time well. Epictetus said, "Nothing great is created suddenly. Calm, respect, attraction, everything is born in the slow soil of patience. And those who are not rooted in slowness will be uprooted at the first wind." When a woman ignores you, time is your ally. You must not rush things. You don't have to force answers. You don't have to transform your anxiety into action. You have to observe, because time reveals what impulse hides. Impulsiveness makes you believe you have to react immediately, that you have to do something. But the man who knows himself knows that true power lies in the pause. Between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. In that space, your freedom lives. Marcus Aurelius called it the inner choice. That moment when you can say, "I will not react as the world expects." And it is in that pause that self-mastery is born. It is there that you learn to transform anger into clarity, anxiety into centeredness, pain into silence. Patience is not passivity. It is controlled strength. It is knowing that you don't have to force reality. You have to listen to it. The authentic masculine is not measured by the number of actions, but by the quality of his expectations. He knows that everything real resists time, and that everything superficial vanishes precisely thanks to time. Those who are impatient want answers now. Those who are wise know that answers come when the noise subsides. Your silence is not just a gesture, it is a spiritual strategy. It is the choice to let time do its work while you do yours, staying centered. Many men, incapable of waiting, burn themselves out. They write, insist, explain themselves, and every additional word distances them from respect, because they demonstrate that their peace is fragile. But the man who knows how to wait conveys something rare, self-confidence. And confidence is magnetic, because a woman faced with a man who doesn't force, who doesn't chase, who doesn't demand, feels secure. And security, for women, is like oxygen. Patience is the highest form of invisible power. You don't see it, but it is felt in every gesture, in every look, in every measured word. A man who knows how to wait isn't immobile. He is under construction. While the world rushes by, he strengthens himself. While others react, he prepares. And when the moment arrives, it doesn't act out of need, but out of choice. The difference between the impulsive and the self-controlled is the same as that between someone who shoots at random and someone who strikes only when necessary. Marcus Aurelius wrote with disarming calm, "The strong man is he who waits for reality to reveal itself instead of forcing it." Reality, after all, is never in a hurry. We are the ones who push it. We are the ones who want immediate answers because we can't stand uncertainty. But uncertainty is the laboratory where calm is born. Those who know how to remain in that uncertainty become impenetrable. They no longer fret over a lack of response because they have understood that the truth always comes, just not when they want it, but when they are ready to receive it. Patience is not passive waiting. It is active waiting. It is investing in time. It is knowing that every hour in which you resist the urge to react is a brick in your inner temple, because calm doesn't come spontaneously. It is built. And every silence you endure without giving in is a spiritual exercise. The Stoics trained the mind precisely this way, by confronting it with controlled discomfort, delay, emptiness, waiting, because they knew that only those who learn to wait can govern themselves. Epictetus said, "He who is impatient to obtain is already a slave to desire." And you were not born to be a slave. If you want respect, if you want strength, if you want peace, you must learn to wait without collapsing, because every wait is a form of detachment, and every detachment strengthens your identity. Time, if you respect it, works for you. It brings out the pretender and the authentic, the curious and the connected, the one who used you and the one who truly cared about you. The truth doesn't come with words. It comes with the days, and you in those days must not lose yourself. You must remain steadfast, like a captain who doesn't let go of their helm during a storm. There's no point in shouting at the elements. You have to resist. You have to breathe. You have to wait for the sea to calm, because the sea, like people, doesn't remain stormy forever. And when the waters calm, those who have stayed the course not only reach their destination, but discover they have become capable of navigating any sea. The impatient man builds short-lived relationships. The patient man builds eternal presence, because calm is what remains when everything else passes. There is a precise, almost imperceptible moment when your calm begins to speak for you. You don't feel it immediately. It doesn't happen after a day or a week. It happens when you truly stop trying to control the outcome. At first, silence is a battlefield. Every hour that passes feels like an eternity. Every missed notification stings. Every thought returns to it like a wave. But then, slowly, something changes. The mind surrenders, the body stops rebelling, the heart stabilizes, and in that moment, what the Stoics called euthymia, a deep and clear calm, you begin to emanate a different energy. You're not feigning indifference. You're not playing tough guy. You're becoming real. You are returning to your true frequency, the one that is not driven by need, but by presence. And when this happens, something in her changes. Because the feminine nature perceives the movement of energy, even when you say nothing. And that calm, that new peace, does not go unnoticed. Suddenly, your absence is no longer a void. It is a mystery. It is no longer a passive silence. It is a force vibrating beneath the surface. Your emotional stability becomes like a silent magnet. It does not shout. It does not ask. It does not demand. It attracts. And the woman begins to ask herself, why hasn't he moved? Why doesn't he seek anymore? Why doesn't he seem touched? It's not a psychological game. It's biology, energy, Archetype. When your energy reorders itself, her unconscious perceives it as security. And security is the primary need of the feminine. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to be present, serene, consistent. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nothing is more worthy of a man than being imperturbable." Being imperturbable doesn't mean not feeling emotions. It means not letting emotions dictate who you are. Calm isn't a lack of intensity. It's the highest form of controlled intensity. It's proof that you've learned to handle the energy of desire, doubt, fear, without being overwhelmed. And the more stable you remain, the more the natural polarity is restored. Because a woman isn't looking for a perfect man, she's looking for a center, a fixed point around which she can revolve without getting lost, a safe harbor where she can be herself without feeling judged. But that harbor can't be built on anxiety. It must be built on tranquility. Here's the paradox that few understand. The calmer you become, the closer she gets. The more at peace you are, the more interesting you become. The more you stop wanting her, the more she begins to wonder why you don't want her anymore. Not because you're manipulating her, but because your energetic state has elevated. And everything that vibrates higher spontaneously attracts everything that is lower. When calm returns within you, your clarity returns too. You begin to see the situation with new eyes, no longer as a war to be won, but as an experience to be understood. You realize that you are not losing anything, that nothing has truly been taken from you, that you are simply going through a lesson, learning to remain whole when something is missing. That is true masculine strength. Not anger, not revenge, not control, but the ability to remain centered even when the world around you is agitated. Calm is an ancient language. It needs no words. It speaks through your posture, your voice, the way you breathe. It is a silent declaration that says, "I do not break." And this unspoken sentence is 1,000 times more powerful than any "I love you" or "I miss you." Because true love is not born of need, but of respect. And respect is born of stability. Every woman, even the strongest, respects a man who does not lose his way, because that calm makes her feel safe, even if she'll never admit it. And the more you center yourself, the more independent you become from the outcome. You no longer care whether she'll come back or not, because your energy doesn't depend on her, but on you. In that moment, you won. You conquered yourself. You passed the invisible test that life has placed before you. And ironically, that's precisely where the dynamics reverse. Not because you planned it, but because reality always responds to your vibration. And the vibration of calm is irresistible. She feels it no longer has a hold on you. And when a woman senses that a man is free, her curiosity explodes. She wants to understand why. She wants to understand how. She wants to understand who you've become. And at that point, you're no longer the same man who wanted answers. If she comes back, it will be by choice, not because you begged. And if she doesn't, it will still be a victory, because you've become what many men will never be: stable. The Stoics would say that in that moment you achieve the highest virtue, the balance between reason and desire. You've learned that freedom doesn't consist in not trying, but in not depending. And this, more than any technique, more than any message, more than any strategy, is what awakens respect, admiration, and true interest. Calm is your secret weapon. It's invisible, but everyone feels it. It's silent, but it speaks louder than any explanation. It's the sign that you've understood the most important lesson, that you're not defined by who stays or who leaves, but by how much you manage to remain yourself in the midst of chaos. There's something irresistible in a man who doesn't explain himself too much. Not because he doesn't want to, but because he doesn't need to. A man who doesn't express every emotion, who doesn't react to every provocation, who doesn't justify every silence. That man exudes an aura that almost no one has anymore: mystery. Mystery isn't pretense. It's the absence of overexposure. It's the difference between those who live to be seen and those who live to be present. In an age where everyone talks, The man who remains silent becomes an enigma. And in the feminine universe, enigma is desire. Because mystery creates space, and space creates imagination. And imagination, for a woman, is the lifeblood of charm. Detachment is not indifference. It is a silent declaration of inner abundance. It communicates that you don't need to be constantly at the center, that you aren't afraid of emptiness, that you don't have to constantly explain who you are to be understood. And this is a form of power, the power of silent presence. Marcus Aurelius said, "Let your soul remain hidden within your being, not for secrecy, but for balance, because what is constantly exposed loses value. What remains partially veiled maintains life, tension, curiosity." When you learn to practice detachment, you're not just stopping chasing, you're reactivating your natural polarity. The masculine retreats, the feminine advances. Your silence becomes a magnetic field. Your detachment becomes an invitation, but not an invitation that demands. An invitation that attracts. Every woman, even the most self-confident, is attracted to a man who doesn't let himself be read immediately. Not out of vanity, but by nature, because where there is no mystery, there is no depth. And where there is no depth, there is no desire. Modern men have killed mystery with hypercommunication. They write too much, explain too much, declare too quickly, and the more they show, the less valuable they are. Male mystery is born not from the absence of words, but from the weight of silence. When you speak, your words must have substance. They must come from an inner calm, not from a need to convince. Detachment works because it shifts power, not because it manipulates, but because it rebalances. When you stop chasing, explaining, demonstrating, your energy field expands. You are no longer reactive. You are rooted. And women, faced with this firm presence, cannot help but feel attracted. Because in today's world, where everything is chaotic, a stable man represents a sacred rarity. Epictetus explained it simply. The free man is he who does not depend on what he does not control. Detachment is freedom, and freedom is seductive. You don't have to feign disinterest. You have to cultivate independence. You don't have to act cold. You have to feel deeply, but choose wisely. When a woman realizes that you can desire her without chasing her, that you can love her without begging, that you can lose her without falling apart, she understands that you're not playing games. You're different. And that difference isn't invented. It's built in solitude, in calm, in the mastery of emotions. It's the result of nights when you learned to breathe through pain, of days when you resisted the temptation to react, of moments when you chose dignity over relief. That's true detachment. It's not escape, it's mastery. Seneca would say it this way: he who masters himself has no need to master others. And when you master yourself, the universe begins to revolve around your calm. People perceive the difference. They look at you differently. They speak to you with more respect. They listen to you more attentively, because your energy has changed. You no longer ask to be understood, and precisely because of this, you are listened to. Male mystery is not a wall, it's a boundary. A boundary that says, you may know me, but not possess me. You may get close, but not control me. And when you live like this, every gesture becomes more weighty, every word more charged with meaning. Your time becomes precious. Your presence becomes a reward, not a concession. Charm is born from perceived value, and perceived value is born from rarity. But rarity is born only from detachment, from that ancient ability to not always be there, to not respond to every call, to not lower yourself to every vibration of another's desire. A man who knows how to detach himself is not cold. He is whole, and his integrity is the most powerful magnet there is. The woman who once ignored you will begin to feel the weight of your absence, because your silence is no longer a reaction, it is a choice, and every coherent choice produces respect. The truth is that female love reawakens in the presence of a man who does not allow himself to be governed by emotions, because that man represents the security she, deep down, seeks. Not a savior, not an impulsive warrior, but a king who reigns over himself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nobility of spirit is not allowing oneself to be disturbed by what happens, but acting according to virtue." This is the mystery. This is the charm. You must not add anything, you must take away noise, anxiety, unnecessary words, justifications. Leave space, leave silence. Let your calm do the work for you, because in the end, the mystery is not what you hide. It is what you no longer need to explain. There is a paradox that modern men no longer understand. They believe that overwhelming passion is the sign of the strongest love. But that is not the case. Passion without control is not love. It is addiction. It is a storm, not a calm sea. And a storm may be fascinating for a moment, but no one dwells in it for long. Genuine attraction, the kind that grows rather than burns out, is born from a single quality: respect. And respect always comes from self-control, because self-control is power. Power over yourself, over your reactions, over your impulses. It's what distinguishes you from those who live enslaved by emotions. It's the difference between someone who screams and someone who looks you in the eye, between someone who implodes and someone who breathes, between someone who explains themselves and someone who is self-sufficient. The Stoics knew this well. For them, the highest virtue was not strength, but mastery. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not let yourself be dominated by anger or desire. Neither passion is suitable for those who have greatness of soul." Uncontrolled passion fascinates for a moment, but self-control fascinates forever, because it conveys stability. And stability is the foundation of everything that lasts. A man who knows how to master his emotions becomes a fixed point, a rock in the midst of a liquid world. And women, even if they don't say it, sense it. They are not attracted by chaos. They are attracted by the calm presence in chaos. By that man who doesn't react to every provocation, who doesn't get dragged into drama, who doesn't descend to defend himself against every accusation. Because self-control is not weakness, it's mastery. It's knowing that not everything deserves a response, that not everything that hurts you is worth your time, that not every battle is worth your peace. Most men today confuse virility with impulsiveness. They think that demonstrating character means responding, raising your voice, not letting others walk all over you. But the truly strong man doesn't have to prove anything. His strength is manifested in his unreacting. A man who maintains his composure isn't disinterested. He's powerful, because he who manages to remain lucid while everything around him moves possesses himself. And he who possesses himself possesses the respect of others. Respect isn't imposed, it's inspired. It arises spontaneously in the presence of those who govern themselves, those who don't lose their dignity to gain attention, those who don't flinch for fear of being forgotten. Women, even if they don't understand it at first, are attracted to that calm, because calm communicates value. He says, "I don't have to rush. I don't need to convince you. I know who I am." And this, in a world where everyone shouts, "Look at me," is extremely rare. Epictetus wrote, "No man is free unless he masters himself." And inner freedom, more than any beauty or success, is what makes a man irresistible. Because a free man doesn't react out of fear, doesn't speak out of anxiety, doesn't love out of lack. He loves because he chooses. And a choice made calmly is worth more than 1,000 impulsive gestures. Passion makes you say, "I want you." Self-control makes you say, "I choose you." And in the difference between wanting and choosing lies the full value of a man. A man who knows how to contain his fire doesn't extinguish the flame. He sharpens it. He transforms it into light, not into fire. Into strength, not into destruction. And that light, that controlled strength, is the most magnetic thing there is, because a woman doesn't feel oppressed by that energy. She feels protected, not crushed, but elevated, not controlled, but respected. It's the kind of energy that doesn't ask, doesn't take, doesn't invade. It stays put, and in its staying put, it affirms everything. Many men don't realize that a lack of self-control doesn't make them appear more intense. It makes them appear more fragile. The man who collapses in the face of silence, who loses his balance over an unread message, who becomes agitated when he isn't understood, shows that his strength depends on external factors. And nothing pushes a woman away faster than a man who can't stand on his own. Self-control, on the other hand, says, I can desire you without losing myself. I can love you without forgetting who I am. I can be by your side without needing to control you. This is what makes a man rare, and what is rare is always respected. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Calm is the power of the mind that accepts reality." Don't fight silence. Don't fight absence. Use them as a training ground to strengthen your inner mastery. Every time you resist the temptation to react, every time you choose silence instead of justifying yourself, every time you stand firm instead of explaining, you are building a strength that is unseen, but that transforms everything around you. Self-control is the highest form of respect. Respect for yourself, for your energy, and even for it. Because you don't use your anger to punish. You don't use your pain to hurt. You don't use your ego to destroy. Choose to remain whole. Choose to stay centered. Choose to embody the kind of man that life respects, not just people. And when you live like this, you no longer need to make yourself respected, because respect precedes you. It's in the way you walk, in the tone of your voice, in the way you look, listen, respond. It's an invisible force that doesn't shout, but imposes. And whoever encounters it, woman or man, never forgets it. There's a huge difference between seeming indifferent and actually being so. Most men, when ignored, pretend. He feigns calm, he feigns detachment, he feigns strength. But inside, he seethes. Every missed notification burns him. Every thought about her torments him. And that fire sooner or later shows, because the body doesn't lie. The tone of voice changes, the look betrays, the words tremble. You can feign indifference for a few days, but if you don't build it within, the world notices. Genuine indifference, on the other hand, isn't a mask. It's an evolution. It comes from inner work, not from trying to appear strong. It's what remains when you've gone through every emotion without running away from any. When you no longer react, not because you don't care, but because you've learned that reacting isn't useful. The Stoics never spoke of feigning strength. They spoke of governing yourself. Epictetus wrote, "Never say, 'I lost it,' say instead, 'I gave it back.'" This is the key. Nothing has been taken from you. You have simply given back something that no longer belonged to you. When a woman ignores you and you manage not to react, you are not denying the pain. You are transforming it. You are converting impulse into power. You are refining your energy. The pain you do not vent becomes strength that does not falter. The anxiety you do not pursue becomes calm that does not fade. And from that calm is born true indifference. It is not coldness, it is clarity. You are detached not because you no longer feel, but because you have learned to distinguish between what you feel and what you need. And not everything you feel deserves a reaction. The pretense of indifference is reactive. It wants to provoke. It wants to get people talking. It wants to be noticed. But true indifference has no goals. It is peace, not strategy. The masculine who has achieved this form of detachment does not want to win. He just wants to stay balanced, because he's understood that every time he lets himself get carried away, someone or something steals his energy. And no free man gives away his energy to someone who doesn't respect it. Many say, you have to show her you don't care. No, you have to feel you don't need her. And there's a world of difference, because when you really feel it, there's no need to prove it. There's no need to publish, there's no need to speak, there's no need to deny. Your posture alone, your calm alone, speaks for you. The modern world rewards reaction. Everyone reacts. Everyone responds immediately. Everyone has to have their say. But those who don't react, those who don't get agitated, immediately become superior, because the absence of reaction is a form of power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to resemble the person who hurt you. When they ignore you, don't respond with the same game. Don't use silence to hurt. Use it to elevate yourself. When you choose not to react, you're not punishing, you're growing, you're not manipulating, you're healing." Authentic indifference comes from overcoming the ego. It's the point where you no longer care about controlling others' perceptions of you. You don't need them to understand, to recognize, to approve. You know who you are, and that's it. This awareness frees you, because you no longer live according to other people's reactions. You're no longer a slave to validation. You're no longer a victim of the need for attention. And when you stop seeking attention, you naturally become attention. Calm attracts more than effort. Silence speaks louder than 1,000 words. Dignity weighs more than any impulsive gesture. Here's the truth. A woman can ignore your message, but she can't ignore your energy when it stops begging. Because that calm, that self-respect, is rare. And everything that is rare gets noticed. You don't have to pretend. Indifference. You must become indifferent. And to become so, you must pass through the fire. You must feel the lack, accept it, observe it, and let it dissolve on its own. Without reacting, without trying to fill it. Your mind will tell you, write it down. Your heart will tell you, make her understand. But your spirit, if you listen to it, will tell you, stay. Remain in the void. Remain in calm. Remain in your dignity. Because every time you resist an impulse, your spirit grows stronger. Every time you choose silence, your value grows. Every time you don't seek what doesn't seek you, the universe respects you a little more. Seneca wrote, "The greatest sign of power is serenity." Authentic indifference is not born of anger, but of serenity. From knowing that you don't have to obtain, but only accept. Accepting that not everything you desire is for you. Accepting that not every person you love has to love you. Accepting that sometimes the lesson is more important than the relationship. When you get to this point, the other's ignorance no longer hurts you. It educates you, it tempers you, it makes you stronger, calmer, clearer. You no longer need to be noticed. You have the privilege of being at peace. And peace, my friend, is what most disorients those who live in chaos. Your authentic indifference will be your shield, not because it closes you off, but because it opens you to what is truly yours. And everything that is truly yours will never make you feel ignored. There comes a moment in every man's life when everything goes silent. No more messages arrive, no one contacts you, and the mind begins to scream, "What now?" It is the most silent moment, but also the most powerful, because it is there, in that void, that you stop being who you were and begin to become who you are meant to be. Silence is not a punishment. It is an initiation. When you have nothing left to chase, you finally begin to look within, and you realize that for years you have defined yourself through others, through their attention, their words, their choices. You have measured yourself against the reflection of the world without ever asking yourself who you really were without all that. And now that the reflection has disappeared, you remain naked before your truth. That is where rebirth is born. Not when everything is fine, but when everything is silent. The Stoics taught it. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of oneself. It is the moment when you feel the beat of your soul without interference. Epictetus said, "Do you want to be invincible? Do not fight what does not depend on you." In silence, you learn precisely this, that your strength lies not in changing what happens, but in changing who you are in the face of what happens. At first, resisting hurts. You feel the need to write, to explain, to close the circle. But every time you stop, every time you let the wave pass through you without moving, a part of you expands. Calm grows where there was once urgency. Clarity arises where there was once fear. And, without realizing it, you begin to be reborn. Silence is like a desert. It strips you of everything, but precisely for this reason, it makes you rediscover what truly matters. You realize that you don't need to be understood to have value, that you don't need to be chosen to be complete, that you don't need to win to be strong. Just being there. Whole. Rebirth is never noisy. It's slow, profound, almost invisible. It happens while everyone thinks you're still. But inside you, something is rebuilding itself with millimeter-perfect calm. The man who reacted to every silence begins to smile at the silence itself. The man who sought confirmation begins to find it in the mirror. The man who lost himself in the love of others begins to rediscover himself in self-love. It's not selfishness, it's balance. It's the return to center after years of wavering. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Withdraw into yourself. No place is more tranquil and peaceful." The world taught you that strength is movement. Stoicism shows you that strength is conscious stillness, that true mastery is remaining whole while everything around you falls apart. When you learn to be in silence, you discover that you are no longer afraid of solitude, because you understand that solitude is not emptiness. It is sacred space. It is the place where your voice regains volume, where thoughts are reordered, where chaos loses power. In that silence, you begin to build again, but in a different way than before. You no longer seek approval. You no longer ask permission. You no longer sell yourself for company. You begin to choose. You choose who can stay, who deserves to come in, who has the calm to walk beside you. And you realize that most of what you wanted before was just a way to not feel the emptiness. Now, however, the emptiness no longer scares you. It nourishes you. In silence, you find your voice, your direction, your identity. And once you have found it, no one can take it away from you. Because true freedom, it's not loving. It's not losing yourself while loving. And the man who no longer loses himself to anyone is not a cold man. He's a complete man. When you learn to be in silence, your energy changes. You no longer emanate neediness. You emanate presence. And presence is the universal language of respect. People begin to feel different around you. They speak softer. They listen to you more. They treat you more carefully. Because your calm imposes silence on others too. This is true rebirth. Not changing what surrounds you, but becoming so firm that what surrounds you no longer changes you. And when you reach that point, life itself reorients itself. People who are not aligned with your peace leave. Those who recognize it, stay. And you don't need to force anything. You've learned the lesson that few learn, that everything you need to be reborn is already within you. You just couldn't feel it before. Now you can. Silence, from an enemy, has become a teacher. From absence, it has become a foundation. From fear, it has become freedom. And the freedom, once tasted, you can't trade it for anything. Every man, at least once in his life, faces the greatest test. Being provoked, tested, ignored, or misunderstood, and remaining standing. Not out of pride, but by choice. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Self-control is not a gift. It's an art built in silence. Through 1,000 falls, 1,000 temptations, 1,000 moments when you wanted to react and didn't. And there, in that suspended moment, you won. Not the other, but yourself. Stoicism called it sophrosenon, temperance, the ability to maintain balance between reason and instinct, between desire and discipline, between impulse and choice. Because the world belongs to those who know how to master their reactions. Every time someone manages to make you lose your temper, that someone owns you. Every time you get angry at a message, feel guilty about a silence, give in for fear of losing, you are surrendering your sovereignty. And the man who surrenders the one's own dominion cannot be respected nor truly loved. Respect comes from self-control, from the coherence between what you feel and what you choose to do, from the power to say, I could react, but I won't. This is the subtlest and rarest strength that exists, because everyone can speak, Everyone can explain, but only a few know how to remain silent and act with moderation. The modern mind is a slave to impulsiveness. The ego screams at you to react. Fear pushes you to demonstrate. Desire pushes you to write. But the spirit whispers to you, wait a minute, an hour, a day. Let the impulse die down, the emotion dissolve, the clarity breathe again. It is in that waiting that the man who never collapses is formed. Marcus Aurelius said, if you are grieved by something external, it is not the thing itself that disturbs you, but the judgment you make of it. And this judgment is in your power to eliminate. Do you have any idea how much power this phrase holds? Everything. Because it tells you that no one can really hurt you without your consent, that the world can only offer you provocations, but you decide whether to let them in. Self-control is not repression. It is not denying emotions. It is knowing them so well that you no longer have to fear them. It is saying, yes, it hurts me. Yes, it hurt me. Yes, I feel betrayed. But don't react with destruction. Remain there, firm, present, until the pain stops commanding. This is mastery. Not brute force, but calm strength. Not the cry, but the breath. Not control over others, but over yourself. Self-mastery transforms the common man into an invisible king. He has no need of thrones, because he rules his own inner kingdom. Whenever life provokes you, a woman who ignores you, a friend who disappoints you, a situation that eludes you, you have two choices: react or transcend. He who reacts remains in the chain. He who transcends becomes free. And freedom, for a man, is true wealth. Not money, not success, not power over others, but power over oneself. Epictetus, who was born a slave, understood this better than anyone. He wrote, "No one is free who does not command himself," and that man, who had nothing, was freer than emperors who ruled empires. You can have everything, but if you can't control your thoughts, you have nothing. Because freedom without control is just a bigger prison. Self-control is born from daily discipline, in the way you wake up, in how you speak, in how you react to small annoyances. It's not built in the big moments, but in the invisible details. When you choose not to respond immediately, when you count to 10 before speaking, when you train even if you don't feel like it, when you say no even if your mind pushes you to say yes. Every small daily victory builds your inner wall. And when the great test comes, when a woman ignores you, when someone provokes you, when life takes away what you love, the wall holds, because it has already been forged by the silent sacrifice of your days. The man who never collapses wasn't born strong. He became strong by falling 1,000 times and getting up again, more calmly each time. He is not a man without emotions. He is a man who has transformed them into fuel. Anger has become determination. Pain has become knowledge. Fear has become faith in his own resilience. And that faith, that silent certainty, is what makes him unshakable. No one can take anything away from him anymore, because he no longer clings to anything. He loves, but does not depend. He dreams, but does not delude himself. He gives, but does not empty himself. He is the man the Stoics called autarkic, he who is sufficient unto himself, not because he rejects the world, but because he does not allow it to define him. This is self-mastery, not victory over external chaos, but peace within it. When you reach this level, someone's ignorance no longer affects you. Insults do not hurt you. Losses do not destroy you. They shake you, yes, but you remain there, calm, present, immovable. And the world, seeing you like this, respects you, because it cannot control you. Self-mastery is the purest form of charisma. The man who doesn't get agitated is the one everyone listens to. He doesn't need to talk much. His silence weighs. His calm inspires. His presence imposes. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The man who masters himself also masters destiny." And this is the final truth. When you learn to control yourself, you not only control yourself, You control your world. At the end of it all, when words run out, when mind games fall away, when interest fades and distance takes its place, only one thing remains: silence. And in that silence, you decide who you really are, because most men experience it as a punishment. But few, very few, learn to make a throne of it. Silence is the highest form of power. It is the language of the strong, the calm, the inaccessible. It needs no explanation. It seeks no approval. It demands no justice. It simply exists. Those who can master it become untouchable. When you no longer react, when you no longer respond to fire with fire, when you no longer explain yourself to those who don't want to understand, you are declaring to the world, "You can't touch me," not in the physical sense, but in the deepest sense. You can no longer displace my energy. You can no longer make me descend into your chaos. You can no longer make me forget who I am. This is what the Stoics called apatheia, freedom from destructive passions. Not the coldness of the soul, but the mastery of the heart. Epictetus said, "It is not things that disturb men, but the opinions they have about things." If a woman ignores you, it is not she who takes away your peace. It is the meaning you give to that silence. It is the interpretation you tell yourself. She doesn't want me. I'm not good enough. I did something wrong. But silence, in itself, says nothing. It is neutral. It is just a space you can fill with pain or with calm, with anxiety or with authority, with fear or with presence. And your choice in that moment decides the kind of man you will become. The common man reacts to silence as an insult. The elevated man uses it as a training ground. Every message that doesn't arrive becomes an exercise in strength. Every unheeded provocation becomes a lesson in mastery. Every void becomes an opportunity to build depth. It is not a competition against others. It is a conversation between you and your soul. Silence shows you exactly where you are weak. It reveals whether you are still a slave to the need for attention, whether your self-esteem still depends on a look, a response, a recognition. But if you remain, if you don't flee, that silence becomes your forge. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Perfect quiet is when the mind is freed from the judgment of others." This is true supremacy, no longer needing to explain yourself. When you no longer have to justify yourself, when you no longer care about being understood, when you can be at peace even if no one agrees with you, you have become inaccessible. Not because you are distant, but because you are profound. People can try to touch you, but they no longer reach your core. They see you, they listen to you, but they cannot penetrate you, because your silence has become a barrier and a shield. And this does not mean closing yourself off. It means carefully choosing who can access your calm. The man who does not react is not weak. He is dangerous, because the world does not know how to control him. It cannot provoke him. It cannot predict him. It cannot move him. And what it cannot control, it ends up respecting. Prolonged calm, silent coherence, create an aura that commands without ever asking. It is the supremacy of the unsaid. It is the power of those who do not compete, but observe. Of those who do not push, but attract. Of those who do not seek consensus, but emanate natural authority. Because authority is not imposed, it is perceived, and it is perceived in silence. Many men think that to gain respect you need to speak louder, but true respect is born when you can remain silent, and everyone, without knowing why, stops to listen to you. Silence is domination, but it is also peace. And peace, in the chaotic world we live in, is a form of luxury. Only those who are truly rich inside can afford it. Those who don't react don't do so because they don't feel. They do so because they don't need to prove it. They have learned that the most powerful responses don't come from the mouth, but from the look, the gesture, the way they carry themselves. When she ignores you and you remain calm, you are communicating something no words could ever say, that your self-esteem is non-negotiable. And this is true attraction, true authority, true freedom. Because the man who doesn't react is not a robot. He is a master. He has been through pain, he has felt rejection, he has faced the fear of not being chosen, and he has overcome it. It's not that he no longer feels, it's that he no longer lets himself be governed by what he feels. This is the highest point of masculine strength. Calm in provocation, presence in absence, dignity in silence. Seneca explained it impeccably. The wise man is like a rock. The storm strikes him but does not move him. And you, at the end of this entire journey, become that rock. Not because you don't try, but because you've learned not to collapse anymore. The supremacy of silence is the supremacy of awareness, of knowing that you don't need to conquer the other, because you've already conquered yourself. And he who has conquered himself no longer fears anything. He doesn't fear silence. He doesn't fear absence. He doesn't fear judgment, because he has found within himself a place where no one can enter. And from that place, he speaks little but weighs heavily. He loves little but loves deeply. He acts rarely, but every time he acts, the world hears it. Silence has become his invisible crown. And when he walks, he doesn't need noise to be noticed. His calm is enough. This is the freedom the Stoics wanted to teach. The freedom that no one can take away from you, because it doesn't come from outside. It is born within you, the moment you stop reacting and begin to choose. And in that precise moment, you become a man who can no longer be ignored, because his silence has become his most powerful voice. And that voice, too. If he doesn't speak, he echoes.